Hiring the wrong trucking accident lawyer could cost you and your family literally thousands, hundreds of thousands, possibly millions of dollars if that's the kind of case you have. So today we're going to answer 15 critical questions you should ask a potential trucking lawyer if you're looking at hiring a truck accident lawyer. The first question has to be, what experience do you have with truck accident cases specifically? And what you're looking for here is knowledge, experience, understanding, expertise with truck accident cases. These are not just big car wreck cases. There are specialized rules and regulations governing the trucking industry. There are often many, many different parties that you can sue, which we can get into later. And so knowledge and experience, having done this before, is critical to hiring the right truck accident lawyer. So a red flag might be if the lawyer tells you, well, I've handled thousands of personal injury cases or many, many different car wreck cases. No, truck accident cases, trucking cases, that's the key. So the next question to ask your truck accident lawyer is, how many truck accident cases have you handled and what were the outcomes? So you'll want specific case numbers and results if they can share those. There might be some confidentiality, but they should at least be able to tell you, I handled a case like this, and here's what happened in that case. Here's the fact pattern. Here's how that accident happened. Here's who was at fault. Here's who we sued. Here's the experts that we hired. If they can't answer that or talk like that, red flag. The third question might be, how many truck accidents have you taken to trial? And don't be surprised if that number is low, because most civil cases do not go to trial. Most truck accident cases do not go to trial. They're going to be won earlier in the case for the most part. What you're really looking for here is, will this lawyer try your case if they have to? Or are they going to kind of strong arm you into taking a settlement or a low settlement because they're scared of going to trial, because they don't really have the expertise or experience to go to trial? They don't have the resources to go to trial. That's another one. I mean, these cases are very resource intensive. They can be very expensive for law firms to fund, and they might therefore try to get you to take a settlement rather than taking your case the distance if that's what has to happen. So what you want is a fighter, someone who will take your case all the way if they have to. The next question might be, what percentage of your casework is truck accident related? What you're looking for here is, you don't want to be hiring the truck accident lawyer who's working your very complex trucking accident case in between the occasional DUI and a divorce, right? You want someone who does this and does it a lot as part of their practice. I mentioned earlier that trucking cases have specialized federal regulations and often state regulations too that apply. So the next question might be, how familiar is this lawyer with those regulations? How do the regulations apply to your case? Were they violated in your specific case? Is there some sort of negligence per se claim that can be made? All these sorts of questions. But what you're really probing is, do they have specialized knowledge of the federal motor carrier regulations? If not, that's a red flag, and do not hire that truck accident lawyer. So then the next question might be, how will the lawyer investigate whether there were Federal Motor Carrier Safety Act violations, whether the regulations were violated? How are they going to look into this, right? Are they going to send spoliation letters? Are they going to investigate the driver's files? Are they going to get the bills of lading? Are they going to look at the electronic data? Like, how are they going to do this? Do they know how to do any of the things I just said? You want to probe that to make sure that this lawyer actually knows how to start this case from the beginning. But this is very critical in trucking accident cases, because the vehicle itself is a key piece of data, key piece of evidence. And you need to get access to that and preserve that evidence very early in the case. So the sooner you get working and the sooner your lawyer gets moving, the better for you and the better result you're going to get in your truck accident case. The next question might be, what kind of experts do they anticipate hiring? What kind of experts have they hired in these cases in the past? We handled a trucking case where a key expert was a biomechanical engineer, an incredibly expensive expert, because there were two different impacts in this complex case, and we had to prove that the injuries that our client sustained were caused by the trucking accident, the first impact, rather than the subsequent impact. And we had to do this very complex analysis that our biomechanical expert, who charged an insane amount of money, was able to do for us. But this is what it takes to litigate a truck accident case properly, right? You have to have a Rolodex of very qualified experts that you've used in the past that can help prove your case. So the key question here for your truck accident lawyer is, What kind of experts have you used? Do you have a network of experts that can help prove my case? If they can't answer that question, again, that's probably a red flag and you shouldn't hire that lawyer. The next thing you're going to want to ask is, what strategy will the lawyer use in your specific truck accident case? All trucking accident cases are different. The mechanics of how the accident happened, the conduct of the driver, the background of the driver, the hiring practices of the trucking company, the load and the way that it was configured, all these things have to be investigated, and it depends upon your specific facts, what happened to you in your case, how the lawyer is going to go about that. So what you're looking for here is some sort of tailored, customized approach to you. You do not want the one-size-fits-all standard operation. All trucking accidents are the same. They have to engage with the unique facts of your case and tailor the investigation to you and what happened to you. And if they don't have a good answer to this question, again, that might be a red flag. The next question is, how do you determine who's at fault in this accident? And this is where truck accidents are not big car accidents. As I said before, there can be many different parties. It's not just the driver who could be at fault, right? It could be the trucking company for hiring practices or for managing driver hours. It could be the broker, right? It could be the company that was contracted to do the loading. It could be the maintenance company that didn't maintain the vehicle properly, and perhaps poor maintenance is the reason that the accident occurred in the first place. It could even be a parts manufacturer if a part of the truck failed, and now you've got an added sort of product liability case on top of your trucking case. So you can see that it quickly escalates into many, many different possible at-fault parties. And this is where the complexity of trucking law really separates the quality of representation you can get for you in your case. The next question is, how do you handle negotiations with trucking insurance companies and their defense lawyers? We've done a video on this, but by law, these trucking companies have to carry $750,000 of insurance, and often they have more. There might be an umbrella policy. Often there's another party at fault that may have another $1 million or who knows. So there's a lot at stake. And the lawyers and the insurance companies have a lot to preserve for themselves. What that means is knowing how to negotiate with them, knowing what's a lowball offer, knowing what is out there, knowing when to say no and to proceed on with the case. Going back to my earlier point about you got to be willing to try the case if you have to. Knowing how to put pressure on the insurance company during negotiations is critical. So you're going to want to ask your potential lawyer, how do they plan to handle that? What experience do they have in handling that? The next section would be financial questions. And let's start with the fee agreement. This should be pretty standard no matter who you hire. Some people do kind of push it and charge too much, but for the most part, it's a contingency fee, meaning you don't pay the lawyer unless they recover for you. And that will either be 1/3, which is 33.33%, or it could go up to 35 or 40%, depending on if the lawsuit is filed or if the case has to go to trial. But it should be the case that it's a contingency fee and that the lawyer advances all the expenses and that you pay nothing up front. If it's anything different from that, that's a red flag. But here's an important one. Next question would be, what are the costs involved in litigating this case and who pays them? The lawyer will advance or should advance all of the expenses, right? And they only come out of your settlement or your ultimate recovery at the end if you win, if you get a settlement. Some law firms will charge interest on these advanced expenses. So read the fee agreement and make sure they're not doing that to you, because that can really eat into your recovery. If they say, well, we're going to advance these expenses, but we're going to charge you some sort of interest rate so that we get sort of paid back some sort of inflationary adjustment for investing in your case. If they've got anything like that, red flag. Finally, the last section I want to talk about is communication, which is really quite important. I've done many videos on this, but when people are upset with their lawyers and want to hire us and they've already got a lawyer and they want to fire their lawyer, this is the reason. It's communication. So you definitely want to ask, how do you communicate with your clients? How often do you communicate with your clients? A trucking accident case is probably going to take anywhere from 12 to 24 months, maybe longer if it gets litigated through discovery. And it's a hotly contested case. So you're going to want to know what's going on every step of the way. You're going to want to be informed by your lawyer. So picking up on that, the last question might be, how long does this process take? It sort of depends on many factors, but anywhere from 12 to 24 or even 36 months if your case is very complex, if it's hotly contested, as I said. One of the key things that is going to determine the timeline, and this is in every case, is whether your treatment is complete. It's almost impossible. In fact, I would say it is impossible as a trucking accident lawyer or any injury case that we take to tell you what your case is worth, to tell you what you should settle your case for when you're still treating, when we don't know the full extent of your injuries, when we don't know the full extent of your medical bills, we don't know how this is going to affect your earning capacity or your job or whatever. When you're right after that initial injury period, it's very unclear, what should happen in your case. What is your case worth? We have to be very honest with you. We don't know yet, right? We will know more when we have all the medical records, medical bills, and understand your future sort of prognosis for how you're going to recover and what your baseline will be. Hopefully it will be your pre-accident baseline, but if it isn't, then, we might have to get economist experts and, all these sorts of things to come in and explain the extent of the injury. So that process takes time. And that's before you even get into, the process of litigation takes time, which probably takes, I would say on average, 18 months, maybe 2 years from the time a lawsuit is filed. So, that's just something to expect in terms of the timeline. Finally, red flags, things to avoid. If the lawyer says this, it's a problem. Number one is guaranteeing specific outcomes, right? If the lawyer says, I will get you X dollars, that's a red flag. They should not be guaranteeing specific outcomes. No lawyer should be guaranteeing results. And if they're trying to do that, it's probably more of a pushy sales tactic than it is a real honest assessment of your case. We will have a very thorough discussion of what we think your case is worth, but it's probably not going to be right on the front end before we've seen any paperwork or done anything that we can just say, oh yeah, we can totally guarantee this. So if people are doing that as a way to get you to choose them, watch out for that because it shouldn't be happening. Already touched on this. Another red flag would be requesting payment up front. Any reputable truck accident lawyer or personal injury lawyer for that matter should not be charging clients up front. And if they're doing that, it's a red flag and also means that they must think that there's something weak in your case. Why wouldn't they do what everybody else does in this space and invest their time and do it as a contingency fee, right? Something's not adding up about that. So I would strongly say if a lawyer says, pay me up front to take your trucking case, find a second opinion. I already touched on this as well, but another red flag would be just sort of generalized personal injury experience, no real experience in trucking cases. So if you found this video helpful, want to watch more on trucking accidents and trucking regulations, watch this next video. Thank you so much for watching.